Hi, this is Ryan at Cannabis on hempstrategies.com as well. I have retired, partially from activism. I really put in a lot of effort when I was involved, and I did my best to do what I could. I did a lot of protesting. I organized a lot of protest. I even got a law changed. I changed a municipal law that was requiring protesters to get a permit before protesting. I got arrested for it. I changed the law. And it had been on the books since 1968. We have given out hundreds of T-shirts to support two initiatives in Washington, I-1068 and I-1149. We did this shirt for Utah. You can see in 2010 we went to a parade and I was handing these shirts out to people to promote legalization in Utah. And we printed these ourselves. We have a little T-shirt business that we started specifically to promote legalization. But with with I-502, I have been motivated to get back into this, and not because I'm really wanting to. I really don't have a lot of time on my hands. I've got 3 kids now since I started doing this activism. We had one to begin with back in 2008 when I started xcannabis.com. When I started BehindZionCurtain.com, we had no kids. In fact, I wasn't married then either. BehindZionCurtain.com is still available, and I still post on it from time to time. But with 3 kids now, and my grandma lives with us now, and we've got a big family, and we've got a lot of things going on. And I just bought a house, and we're moving, and just a lot of things in our lives that I really don't have time for this activism. On top of the fact that I have a 9-to-5 job and a couple of businesses that I run. So I-502 has sparked my interest because one of our businesses started in Washington. Well, actually 2 of our businesses started in Washington, and let's see, Emerald Sun started up there, and Artistic by Nature started up there, and then of course I started xcannabis.com when we were up there. So we go up there quite often. I have family. My adoptive grandma that adopted me when I was homeless, she lives there, and we visit her, and I have work that's up there, and clients, and my 9-to-5 job is based up there, so we go up there every once in a while. And with these I-502 driving provisions that are so restrictive and make no sense scientifically, and the fact that it's a big hullabaloo about stuff that doesn't even exist. They keep saying that with I-502 there's going to be a legal market, and people are going to be able to grow, sell, and possess marijuana, which isn't true, because it has to be authorized by the state and licensed and regulated by the state. And that's one thing, but the fact that it didn't happen with SB 5073 for medical marijuana in the same platform shows me that it's not going to happen for full recreational legalization, because if it didn't happen with SB 5073 last year, it's not going to happen with it with I-502 next year. That's just the facts. That's how it goes. But these driving provisions are pretty rotten, and what they're saying, New Approach Washington, or the ACLU, they keep saying via Allison Holcomb that the reason why they put these driving provisions in the initiative is so that voters will vote for it, and they base it off of some exit polling for Prop 19, saying that that's what the voters wanted. And that's just not true. And not only is it not true, but it's proven not true. I wanted to show you at stopthedrugwar.org, and this is what we moved from Washington down to California, in part because of the direction that California was going in relaxing marijuana laws. And we saw this coming up, and it passed. SB 1449, proposed by Senator Mark Leno. Marijuana will be treated like a traffic ticket. The fine will remain $100, and there will be no arrest record. So, there was no replacing the marijuana laws with new laws in California. That didn't happen, with SB 1449. They didn't say, okay, well, we're going to decriminalize marijuana, but in its place, let's make sure that, we put something else there, like driving restrictions or something. And I just think that it's pretty you know, it's pretty horrible precedents to set to say, hey, we agree that prohibition needs to stay in place in some way, shape, or form, so let's replace possession laws with DUI laws. You know, and in Washington, these DUI laws are really horrible. They won't allow anybody to drive under the age of 21 with any active THC in their system whatsoever. You know, and this is the majority of the population that's getting arrested for cannabis, and so, you know, that's why the state of Washington, as Carrie Boyder, you know, gracefully pointed out during a debate at HempFest, that, you know, it's going to, the state of Washington, you know, they have released a financial report saying they're going to receive, they expect to receive $4.2 million in new revenue from DUI arrests. So, you know, their projection is that they're going to be receiving new money, new income that they weren't receiving before for new arrests under these DUI provisions. And that tells me they're going to pursue them. It's not like it's just, you know, possible they're going to get this. I mean, they're actually going to pursue these arrests. And, you know, if you look at what, you know, Allison Holcomb and Pete Holmes have said, you know, and the ACLU, they've constantly rejected legalization for 75 years, the ACLU anyway. Allison Holcomb and Pete Holmes rejected Sensible Washington's two initiatives blatantly and outright. In public statements, rejected supporting full legalization in Washington, which had a lot of good things, you know, put into it that would decrease the cost of prohibition and increase revenue, as well as empower a new market. Just like they did in Holland, just like they did in Portugal. I mean, it just makes sense. But, you know, they all rejected it. All of these backers are rejecting, you know, real legalization, and in turn, in return for what they are rejecting, they're giving something like I-502, which won't allow any legal grows, it won't allow any legal sales. Passing a joint will still be a felony. You know, the whole idea that it gives any freedoms is ridiculous. There's like 13 states that have decriminalized cannabis where it's just an infraction. You get no criminal record from, you know, possession of cannabis. You know, you may pay a fine, but when the fine is like $100, which it is in California, it costs the state more money to pursue that than it does benefit them financially. So they're not going to be going and spending state resources to pursue simple possession when their reward is only $100. Especially if people are challenging it in court, you know, then it will cost them 5 to 10 times as much in legal cost to, you know, defend these charges on the state level, you know, municipal level or otherwise. So I don't know of anybody in California. We've lived here for almost 2 years. I don't know of anybody in the last year or so that's been arrested for simple possession. It's not worth the cops' time. It's not worth the state's time. It costs them more than they receive. So, you know, that's the way to do it. If you're going to decriminalize, if you're not going to let people have home grows, if you're not going to allow a legal market, if you're not going to allow, you know, full-on legalization, then decriminalize in a sensible way like California has done, where you get no arrest record, you get no arrest, you know, it's treated like a traffic ticket, and the fine is only $100. That's the way to deter, you know, police from arresting people for cannabis. But when you know, provide new avenues for new revenue, then the police are absolutely going to pursue that. It helps their departments and it helps the state, you know, to go after people for DUI. Plus, it helps the people, you know, that run these private jails, and, you know, keeps sheriffs that are, you know, deputies at the jails employed, and all these other things that are involved with prohibition. It keeps those people in business, and that's the unsensible part of what I-502 is introducing. But, you know, from my perspective, you know, when these people say, well, you know, if we reject legalization in Washington, then it's going to tell everybody in the United States that, you know, Washington isn't ready for legalization. But I don't think that's true, because the people that are rejecting it, and if you saw HempFest, if you saw any pictures or videos of HempFest, there were, you know, multiple booths, many people wearing no on 502 shirts and you know, paraphernalia that, you know, rejects I-502. And the organizers of HempFest, for the most part, Vivian McPeak and the rest, are against I-502. So, Washington activists that are involved in, legalization, that are promoting legalization, that have worked on campaigns to legalize and gotten hundreds of thousands of signatures for things like, Initiative 1149 and Initiative 1068, those people are rejecting I-502, but they're also supporting, Colorado's Amendment 64 and Oregon's Measure 80, and so, people aren't going to be looking at Washington saying, oh, well, Washington isn't ready for legalization. All they got to do is look at HempFest and look at the stories behind these people who are rejecting I-502. They're not rejecting legalization. They're rejecting new penalties introduced by Initiative 502, while at the same time supporting other more sensible initiatives that don't introduce new penalties. That's all we're saying. So, when I am talking to people about this, I tell them, go look at SB 1449 and compare that to Initiative 502. You're basically getting the same thing as far as possession decriminalization. It's an ounce either way. California might charge you a $100 fine if they catch you with it, but it's not likely because it would waste their money and their time. So, they're not arresting people for cannabis possession in California anymore. Whereas before they were arresting 60,000 people, now they're just not. So, that's the best thing about decriminalization in California compared to decriminalization in Washington. And that's what I tell people to look at. I, in part, moved to California because of what they were doing here in relaxing the laws, and I continue to support full legalization. And, if you want to talk about, oh, well, cannabis is scary, you got to worry about people who are driving and, all of that, and, what are they going to do? Bullcrap. If you look up on YouTube a BBC study that was done, by the British Broadcasting Company, and it was to mimic something that was done by the United Kingdom's government. And so what they did was they mimicked a road test, a field test out in the field, that was done virtually by the government. And what they found in their test environment in this, driving course is that people drove better when they were stoned. Like literally, they let them drive when they were sober. They didn't drive as well as after they smoked a big doobie. And they filmed it. They showed the whole study from start to finish, and it's very compelling. In fact, I'll try to show it to you here. But a couple of things that they're not mentioning, like on the wiki article that I'm looking at here, like when they start talking about, find it. They start talking about the tax. They say, and impose a $25 excise tax on wholesale and retail sales on marijuana. They're not talking about the full aspect of this. They're not saying that what I-502 is proposing is that it will give a 25% tax from the grower to the distributor, and from the distributor to the retailer, and to the retailer to the patient, and so on and so forth. There's 75% taxes plus a 10% tax on top of that, so it's 85% taxes on marijuana, which will still force it, if they got the legal market, which they won't, but it still forces people back to the black market, which will be obviously cheaper. You have to look this up at the Secretary of State website and learn about it. I mean, it's 68 pages. It's the longest initiative I've ever read for legalization ever. It has so many loopholes for cops to, get you, and so very little provisions for freedom. But you need to read it to understand it fully, and there is a lot to it that doesn't make any sense. Like, in fact, they don't even talk about probable cause in the initiative. I learned this from Carrie Boyder, where she pointed it out at HempFest. You can look that up on YouTube, the I-502 debate at HempFest, where, reasonable grounds is covered, and it says that if a cop writes up a report saying that he suspected you were under the influence of marijuana, that's all they need. They don't need to do a field sobriety test. Nothing in the initiative says anything about field sobriety test. When they take your blood, all they need is a written testimony of a police officer to get that. They don't need a field sobriety test and all the stuff that they need now. They don't need to prove impairment. All they need is, a testimony of a cop written on paper. That's all. And so I think it's pretty regressive. I support progress. I reject regressive initiatives like I-502. You know, and in fact, I meant to send a donation to Measure 80. You know, I was just going to send 10 or 20 bucks, and so I'm glad I remembered to do that. I also wanted to show you. I wanted to show you what I'm working on with Bitcoin. I'm trying to talk some of these initiatives into using Bitcoin, because Bitcoin is a great way to exchange on the internet without using a central currency or, you know, federal, you know, reserve notes and stuff. I'm trying to get away from that, but there's also a way to mine Bitcoins by letting your computer do the work of the Bitcoin community by processing these blocks. It's kind of complicated. I'm not going to explain it to you, but I did write this article, and it is a really good way to come up with money without, you know, investing, you know, money that you would spend on food or something else important to your life. I mean, if you don't have a lot of money but you want to help out, this is a great way to start. And so if you go to this link right here, I'm going to try to show you, slu2.com/j r u. That's the address you can go and read this at. And I'm trying to encourage all activists to raise Bitcoins and then send it to these initiatives. So, you know, and you can also see a ticker for what Bitcoins are worth. One Bitcoin is worth $11.06 of US currency right now. And, you know, to get money out of it, you can buy with these Bitcoins prepaid debit cards. And then you can use those prepaid debit cards to fund initiatives, buy advertising, you know, whatever. Print out petitions, buy signs, things like that. So, and the way you can start earning these without investment, without any investment whatsoever, is use bitminter.com. And obviously do your own research. There's a lot of ways to get free Bitcoins, but do your own research. Make sure your computer is secure. You know, you don't want anybody hacking you because they can get your Bitcoins. So just make sure you got a firewall, antivirus, and you're fairly safe on the internet. As long as you make, you know, basic provisions for security, you won't get your computer hacked and stuff. And you know, it's a good way to start out with no investment, with no money of your own, to help out these initiatives. So like I say, we support Measure 80 and Amendment 64. Both of those we support, and we totally reject Initiative 502 and the precedents that it might set. Well, in fact, if it passes, it will set a precedence, and it'll basically tell the world, hey, we agree with stupid restrictions that are unscientifically based. So yeah, let's pass this. And then other states will start doing the same thing. We don't want to see that happen. We want to see good laws passed, you know, that make progress, like Measure 80 and Amendment 64. And that's from xcannabis.com and hempstrategies.com and slu2.com. Peace and nugs.